Alexander the Great, the god who was buried alive. They were the titans of conquest: Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, and Napoleon Bonaparte. For men who bent the world to their will. But what happens when a conqueror wants everything? Imagine a man who wept because there were no more lands to conquer. Alexander, the warrior who carved an empire stretching 2 million square miles, still felt unfulfilled. He wasn't a ruler. He wasn't a king. He was a storm, a glory hunter, born to conquer or die trying. While his men dreamt of home and riches, Alexander only saw the next frontier. 10 years of war had made him a legend, but also blind to what lay ahead. In India, he met resistance unlike any other. King Porus, his toughest opponent. The cost? Heavy. His horse fell. He bled, but still he pushed forward. Dramatic music rises. Cut to a misty riverbank and war-worn soldiers refusing to march. Alexander's army, once fearless, now stood broken. On the banks of the Hyphasis River, they faced a fresh Indian force across the water, strong, disciplined, and ready for blood. His own men, exhausted and disillusioned, refused to go further. For the first time, Alexander the Unstoppable was stopped by his own army. They begged, they cried, and the man who never listened to anyone was forced to turn back. This was not just the turning point of campaign, it was the beginning of his end. Glory had been his food, conquest his drink. But now in Babylon, the drinking became real. One night, deep in celebration or despair, he drank more than ever. Soon he fell ill, gravely so, and as he lay weakened, his ambitious generals circled like vultures. "Who shall rule after you?" they asked. His answer? Cold, cruel, to the strongest, a throne born from chaos. And it was only getting started. India was the edge of the world, and it was here that Alexander met a wall he couldn't break. The Battle of the Hydaspes was his most brutal yet, facing King Porus, a warrior king with war elephants and hardened troops. Alexander triumphed, but it came at a cost. Many of his men were slain. His beloved horse, Bucephalus, died, and Alexander himself was wounded, his mortality now undeniable. Still, he marched forward. But across the next river waited another massive Indian army, fresh and ready. His own forces were exhausted, starving, demoralized, and for the first time in his career, they refused. They would march no farther. They wanted to go home. There, under stormy skies, the greatest conqueror in history was forced to do what no enemy had ever made him do: retreat. The dream of conquering the ends of the earth died on that riverbank. Alexander returned west, but he wasn't the same. Wounded in body and spirit, he settled in Babylon, an ancient city of wealth, decadence, and shadows. There, the warrior became a man again. But he didn't rest. He planned new campaigns: Arabia, Carthage, even Rome. He wanted the whole world. Meanwhile, his closest friends and generals watched uneasily. Alexander had grown unpredictable. He drank heavily, trusted few, and punished paranoia with swift brutality. Then, at one fateful banquet, he drank more than ever before. Soon after, he collapsed. Fever racked his body. He could no longer speak. For days, he slipped in and out of consciousness, surrounded by scheming commanders who whispered of succession and power. They asked him, "To whom does your empire belong?" And he whispered, "To the strongest." With that single phrase, he detonated a power struggle that would last for decades and doom his empire before it could truly rise. Alexander's empire was never truly whole. It was held together by one man's will, and now that was gone. His top generals, the Diadochi, turned on each other. No one cared for unity, only dominance. His lands were torn apart like spoils of war. Ptolemy claimed Egypt. Seleucus took Persia. Antigonus wanted it all. For nearly 50 years, his successors waged war across continents. Endless bloodshed, all in the name of a dead king. Macedonia faded into irrelevance. The dream of one unified world under Alexander became dust and memory. But perhaps that was always the plan. For Alexander, it had never been about nationhood or governance. It was always about his name echoing across time. And in that, he succeeded. He ruled for only 13 years, yet 2,000 years later, we still speak his name. But what we remember may not be the truth. Greek historians wrote that Alexander's body didn't decompose for 6 days. To them, it was proof of divinity, proof he was a god. But modern science tells a darker tale. Some neurologists believe he wasn't dead at all, but suffering from Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare disorder that paralyzes the body while keeping the mind awake. If true, then Alexander didn't die in Babylon. He was buried alive, trapped in his own body, unable to move, speak, or cry for help. And as his generals argued over his legacy, as traitors planned their rise, he may have heard every word. Imagine the horror, the unstoppable conqueror reduced to a helpless shell. Not by battle, not by blade, but by illness and ambition. His sarcophagus disappeared centuries later, lost to history. And with it, the final secrets of his end. But not even death could erase his legend. Alexander was never meant to be remembered for peace, justice, or wisdom. He was a force, a hurricane of ambition that changed the world in a blink. He left behind no lasting government, no children who ruled after him. But he left behind a legacy of awe, of wonder, of fear. Cities still bear his name. His tactics are still studied in war colleges. His shadow stretches across continents, across time. He was a man who became myth, who may have died silently in agony. Or maybe, in some strange twist of fate, that silence was his final conquest, proving he could master even death itself. If you believe history is more than dates and names, that it's stories like these that shape our world, then don't just watch. Join us. Subscribe to Timeless Legend and rediscover the epic truths behind the world's most unforgettable lives.
Creator, creator, creator,